Okay, kia ora everybody. Welcome to our Growing Connections and Confidence webinar series. Today we've got EOTC and safety, and we've got the awesome Libby Paterson here who is going to share some of her awesome knowledge with us, some great resources. Libby is a teaching fellow and kaiarahi at Victoria University of Wellington and an accredited facilitator at Otago University. And on the Eons, Education Outdoors New Zealand board. So she's a pretty busy lady. So thank you for your time today, Libby. I will hand it over to you and we'll get into it. Thank you.
Kia ora and welcome, Bridget. We'll just start with a little karakia to just give you an opportunity to just move out of that school space and for us to move out of the busyness that we've been doing.
I forgot it wasn't.
So join with us if you want to. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia mā kena kena ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tāu, e iaki ana te atakura, e tio, e huka, e hauhu, ki hei mauri ora. I think it's going to be a -3 degree frost tomorrow, so we might get a glorious day. It's pretty foul here, and as I'm only just over the road from you, Bridget, it's pretty pretty nasty. Just before we go, I just want to spare a thought for Kathy Haddock. You might have seen where there was that boating accident at Kaikoura, and Kathy Haddock was an amazing educator, and she joined the ministry in 2002 and was responsible for writing lots of risk management guides prior to that, and she was responsible for writing our very first set of guidelines that we delivered professional development on. She's an educator, a mentor, an advocate for anything and everything outdoors, and just an all-round good person and or great person really. So that's why I've got that kua hinga te tauthara o te wainui a Tāne, a great tree has fallen in the forest of Tāne. So we're really sad for her husband Pete and all her friends and family, and it just seems such a horrible way to go for somebody who was so passionate about the outdoors. So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ka rua mataka, te mauna, te run, tāku nākou, ka rua mahanga, tōku awa e mahi nei aku mā harahara, ka William David te waka, ka McLaren tōku clan, ka whangatui e tāra ahau ki te noho o ki Martinborough, kei ako ahau ti te whānau aku pai and Otago University, ko Libby ahau, ko Libby Paterson tōpa nō reira. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So now you know I just live a little bit over the road from you or over the hill from you. And I have had a bit of an association with Mangariki over a few years. So have you been to any of our professional development?
Yeah, I have. I came, there was one that you ran I don't know how many years ago, but down at the Pelorus Trust.
Oh, right.
Park. Yeah, so that was, I came to that one. I don't know when it was, but so that was the last EOTC sort of professional development stuff that I've had. So yeah, just trying to make sure I keep up to date with the goings on of what best practices and things. So
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is being recorded, so hopefully the tools will be useful for anybody who's jumping in and joining in on this journey today. Probably it is really important for me to share some key messages about education outside the classroom, underpinned by New Zealand curriculum and te marotanga, should meet learner needs, should be curriculum based and learning outside the classroom. And it does include sport, and sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect there. This next step is really important about how everything must be embedded with school-wide approaches to health and safety. And I'll show you a bit of a diagram that we've developed probably since you were there. And the key thing about anything you do is, it's good planning, B, there's competent staff, and people do what they say they're going to do, and then there's a review of it to see what good practice is. So you'll notice that best practice has gone to good practice, just in the sense that good best practice seems to be sort of sounds like it's set in concrete, whereas good practice like this keeps evolving. I think it's important to find out about what the curriculum says, and as a deputy principal and as a classroom practitioner for all those people that view this, safety management sits in our achievement objectives, and I'm sure it'll sit in our know, understand, do when we revisit our changes to the health and PE learning area. And one of the critical stages here is that we need to teach our students, our ākonga, about safety management. And you'll see that the level of difficulty here gets higher and higher. And obviously when we're talking about level 5, level 6, 7 and 8, we're talking about NCEA level 1 and 2. And certainly looking forward to the change in the standards there, so that the material can be updated, because it is a little bit tired, so it'll be really good. But I think the message here is ensuring that all classroom teachers, particularly at primary school, who are responsible for the 8 learning areas, identify where they're teaching this with their ākonga, as opposed to writing up all the forms and giving them to the helpers and that sort of thing, or telling the kids about what they should and shouldn't do. So good starting place is the NZC. So anything we do in the name of education outside the classroom is underpinned by the health and safety 2016, and depending on the size of your school, depends on whether you'll have a health and safety rep or all of you will be. A school of 22 usually has its own staff member that's responsible for health and safety. Smaller ones, you know, it's spread across the school, and obviously there's hopefully a board member that's responsible for that. So there's a little diagram here to highlight the fact that we have the Health and Safety at Work Act 2016, and that's our overarching document, but then we have all these things that sit underneath, and EOTC is just one of them. And you'll have some health and safety stuff that happens with technology and keeping your ākonga safe on the net. You'll have things with science, and when you're working with chemicals, you know, the caretaker will have something in there and around when he's working with chemicals and that sort of thing. And but they will have slightly different policies and things like that, but ultimately they will have the same emergency response, incident reporting and monitoring reviewing, which is quite handy. Obviously it'll be around the incident reporting, and the emergency response will be slightly different in a chemical lab or the gardener's shed, as opposed to out in the outdoors and the playground and that sort of thing. But there will still be similar processes that are carried out. And then out of that falls our safety management plan, our EOTC procedures, and our tools and templates. And I'll show you exactly where all those are that are accessible. Do you know which templates you're using, Bridget, at your place? Are you using the latest ones?
Yeah, so I've recently downloaded the ones off the I think it's on the Eons website, I think they are. Yep. And yeah, so they're the ones that I've taken and sort of changed a little, changed headers and things on them to suit our school.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome. Is it John?
That's John. Yep. John has just joined.
Oh, kia ora, John. We're just a little way, we haven't done much, but we're just a little way through. So whereabouts are you? Would you like to introduce yourself to us so we can just make sure this fits your system, your place?
Hey, kia ora. I'm actually in the car, sorry, at the moment.
You and Sophie too.
Between training and doing a bit of schoolwork. But I'm from Waikato Dyson School for Girls. I'm a PE teacher there, and it's good to just sort of get a bit more information around this area. So.
Okay, and you can ask plenty of questions later too. Yeah, Sophie's in the car as well. Welcome. You can always come back anyway. Yeah. So clearly this is our guiding document, bringing the curriculum alive. And one of the key things here to note is that it will only ever be an online document, like the Health and Safety Act and those sort of bits and pieces. And it gets updated online, and just inside on the front right hand cover is the latest version. And the one that's there at the moment is April 2018. And as we update it, you'll see those updates come through to schools. In order to get those updates, you do need to be a member of the EOTC database, which you'll see in this next slide here. And there is a link here. Do you know if your schools are members of that?
Yeah, I tried to join the other day, but I wasn't sure if someone from our school was part of it. So I did need they came back with they were checking or something, and then they'll
okay, yep. So one person from each school registers on the database, and if there are any changes to the guidelines, they will automatically get a copy of the wording and the change. And so it does need to be somebody who's going to share it with the appropriate members of the school community to make sure that they're aware of that. And so there's a link there. I'm going to take you to our Eons Facebook page, our Eons page. It is a stunning landing page with just so much material, and it's really rich. But this particular thing to begin with is about paperwork and processes in around paperwork and planning. And I suppose the key thing here, and this comes directly out of the guidelines, is that the paperwork must be proportionate to the level of risk of the activities. So the lower the level of risk, the lower the level of paperwork. And paperwork is one thing that is often our teachers have struggled with, and expecting sort of mountains and mountains of paperwork for quite low risk activities. Doesn't mean to say we do need to take all practical steps to make sure our ākonga are safe, but it doesn't mean we have to have mountains and mountains of paperwork to do that. So these two are bullet points straight out of the guidelines. That little 108 is the paragraph that it represents, like 113 is as well. They're not page numbers. When you open the book, you'll see all the paragraphs there. And that key message from 113 talks about having good systems within a good school setting will reduce paperwork for staff and get them to focus more on the effective teaching and learning, and bearing in mind that safety and learning must go hand in hand. So with the new tools, was that a question, John?
Yeah, Libby, with the new sort of EOTC apps, and the schools going to some schools are going to a digital EOTC paperwork system. Have you seen much of these?
Yes, quite a few schools have developed some quality systems, some within their own technology department, or teachers that have a range of skills. We have looked at several different platforms, and we are looking at Schoolbridge at this.
Okay, cool.
They're working with us alongside ensuring that these tools are exactly the same. School Docs is another organisation that we work with, and many primary schools are tied up with school docs, and secondary schools have used it as a platform as well. The key thing there is to ensure that you actually make those documents your own and you really tailor them so they're about your school. So, you know, what is EOTC at Waikato Dyson? What is it at Mangaraki Primary? What's special about that? And what's the progression of learning across that? So any of those forms are very useful, but they certainly need to meet the needs of your ākonga and your communities in your school setting.
Yeah, I know like Waikato Dyson is does a mixture of Google Forms and then always does a paper version as well. It's quite like I took a group to a ski field this year, and like the EOTC you know, like risk and stuff was like a giant Bible. By the time I finished it, they're really proactive in making sure they print out everything from medical forms to you know, all the RAMS forms across everything. And I sort of found that kind of a backward step because my last school was quite digital. If that makes sense.
Yes, it certainly does make sense. The key thing is that everybody goes away on your trip has a clear understanding of what the process is and around managing the risk for that trip, and how that's shared with those activity leaders, senior students, and how quick you have access to it if something does tend to go pear-shaped with one of your students, wherever they might be. So yes, many of them are looking at digital forms, and of course, in terms of you know, you can access most of your Google Docs very quickly wherever you are. There are links to KMAR as well, so there will be, you know, student management systems depending on what your school student management system is. You can, you know, draw your first aid and your health. I think the challenge is about ensuring, in terms of medicals, is ensuring that our school community really understand how important these are and how important it is that they update them. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think they're like I'm kind of lucky with semi sort of private school. They're really proactive at reprinting everything, budget wise, like on the week of you leaving for the trip. So it's really up to date with a nurse, but yeah, it's still a lot of paperwork,
You know, but if you have access to that digitally, then that's, you know, but you've got to be aware of that group of students that you take with you and what their medicals are and what you need to share with your volunteers or your supervisors. I suppose, Bridget, you will have seen things like the safety action planning that we used to do and those sort of things. And we've now gone to, there's a range of tools that we use in terms of managing risk. And in the toolkit, it looks at RAFs, a risk and supervision matrix. And
is that the one that's got the example about fire lighting on it?
Yes, it has got a fire lighting. It's about camping. It's quite involved.
Yeah. So when would you, 'cause that's one of my questions, like when would you use that compared to sort of one of the SAPs instead? Would you
we've probably moved to a RAF or RAS, risk and supervision structure, to and a SOC form. So for your everyday activities that you do, it might be walking your students to the library, it might be going to the town pool, it might be secondary schools going to the local memorials, going and playing sport in various competitions. Your school will have a set of standard operating procedures that every time they go, this is our process. What will change is the venue, the group of students you take, their medicals, and what's front of mind for those things. the key challenge is that there are a whole heap of different tools that we need to use. I've got a copy of our planning tool, which does look very much like our early SAP forms, but it has been adapted to meet the needs actually out of the Health and Safety at Work Act. And this is a particularly good tool to use even when you're planning those big camps or ski trips and that sort of thing, and then you'll pluck some stuff out of there once you've done that. So it is really an initial stage. And for some of your SOPs, you might do something like this and start as a process with your staff and then make them available on your Google Docs for walking downtown, doing that sort of thing. It still means the teacher in charge must actually go through the material that's on there. It's not just a case of, in the old days, we used to just twink it out and change the dates and leave all the stuff underneath. We have a responsibility to ensure, it comes out of Ngā Paerewa, Ngā Matatika and Ngā Paerewa, our code, our standards, that we'll do no harm and we'll look after students. So we still have a huge responsibility to ensure that our corner is safe. So I'd potentially probably start here and then move into creating some school-wide SOPs that you can use, that either staff and or some of your students, if you go back to that page about what's in the curriculum, then it doesn't matter whether they're 5 or at senior school, they should be planning, they should be doing some of their own, assessing the risk and what they're going to do in order to manage some of the risk that's out there. So here, clearly you'll see that it's got links there. Why are we doing this? To the curriculum. What could go wrong? We've probably changed the terminology of fraction as the potential harm that can happen. What can cause this to happen is, the hazard that's going to impact or could create that harm to a student. And then we have a risk rating, and this is probably one of the most important things, this element of this planning document, and we identify whether it's low, medium or high. And if you look at our safety management system, you will see that we have color coded those various activities that happen in and around the school and maybe further afield. Element, when water's involved, it's always going to be high or extreme. And then we're going to put in some controls to ensure that that doesn't happen and hopefully reduce the level of risk, of potential risk. Around water, it's always going to stay as a red. So usually schools use green, yellow and red. Sometimes they have a 4th colour because of the range of activities they do. So we put some controls in place and then we're going to see how much risk is left. If it's still in the extreme, we're going to have to revisit that and think, should we do this? Should we not do this? However, John's driving, even though that is a very risky activity, I'd have to say. But, we drive to work on any given day and that sort of jazz. So it is a risky activity, probably listening as well is a bit risky. But so we minimise it as much as possible and do what we can to make sure that we lower the level of risk. We wear our seatbelts, we look at the road signs, we do all those things. Water and overnight potentially always do land up still being at that high level. And what happens here is then what we do is we take that activity out and put it into our RAS, and then we really unpack how to ensure that we're going to minimise the level of risk for our corner. And that's the one you're looking at, Fiona, Bridget, with the fire lighting and that one around camping. There are some really good examples, and I'll show you where they are, that will support you in developing some of these tools as well. What happens with this tool is that you'll see down the bottom, I've sort of cut and pasted, and I'm happy to send you a copy of the A3 if you want one. If it still goes wrong, this is what we'll do. And clearly that's your emergency procedures, or your TERPS plan, or your crisis management. And previously in the past, we often just used to put dial 111 and get the first aid kit. But you know, if an ākonga had been run over, or someone had been seriously hurt or burnt or whatever, dialing 111 and getting the first aid kit isn't going to be particularly satisfactory in terms of outcomes for that student. So we really want people to think about what they actually need to do, go through the ABCs of first aid. You know, if it's hypothermia, really think about what they will do in order to make sure that ākonga is okay. And then also it gives us an opportunity to think about, if the worst possible scenario happens, we have actually got a process in place that we would follow. And that is really important to share that with all of those people that are going, in terms of your volunteers or your activity leaders, or so that they are really aware of the process. There's quite a detailed piece in the booklet about emergency preparedness. One of the things that's really good about this form, I believe, in terms of planning, is thinking. So you turn it over, and on the back of it, it has some links to core competencies, roles and responsibilities, and a bit of a supervision structure. And so if you happen to be going skiing and you're using your activity leaders on the mountain, or you want to know what those people have in terms of a skill set that is going to ensure this activity runs smoothly and safely on the mountain. And you jot those things down, and then, you know, you'd be saying, so right, Sophie's in charge here, this is her role. Bridget's in charge of looking after the medicals and looking after the group 1 of the kids. John's in charge of looking after group 2 of the kids, or he might be the instructor because he's got plenty of experience on the mountain. And so we're really clear about what those roles and responsibilities are. A little bit different if we're walking down the road. Obviously, it depends entirely on the place. But if we're at the town pool and we're using our own staff as lifeguards, then it's critical that people are actually know what their role is, and they're not sitting on the bleachers having a cup of coffee or doing their marking. And then you'll see there's a supervision structure here. And the key thing here is, if the worst possible scenario happens, as in a student drowns, or there's an accident, a car accident or whatever, then we know exactly where that student is in terms of the groups. We've got adults per group, or supervisors, qualified supervisors per groups, and everybody knows what their what their role is. Sorry, that's the dog. Seems to quite do it every time I get a go, doesn't he, Sophie?
Yeah.
So we would actually draw our supervision structure here. And in those big events, one of the key things that we tend to look at is making sure that we've got somebody who's a loose goose, who's overseeing the big picture. And potentially they are the person probably that's looking after that leftover risk that we've identified from the previous slide. Over here, down here. So this is the part we probably didn't do. When I first started doing these things, I did a RAMS form, and I would have put it in my pack. I would have told everyone what they had to do. Hopefully I told my volunteers and supervisors what they had to do, and I probably never looked at it again. But if there's any form of residual risk, then we need somebody who's absolutely monitoring that all the time. And water is the place where we unfortunately seem to have a number of school accidents or incidents, and often it's because some of the school processes haven't been followed. So the good thing about that is you're going to look at who's involved there, and you're going to give them a job, and you're going to draw a pretty little picture. And there's a really good reading about that Gemma Perium wrote in and around who's flying the plane. Let's not talk about ratios. So it's more about a supervision structure, because we designate that supervision structure in and around the group of ākonga that we have. So I might have a couple of ADHD students, I might have some non-swimmers, and we're doing some water activities. So I've got a lower supervision structure for the, a higher supervision structure. I might have 1-to-1, for example, and so on, because of who my makeup is. And that would be the same thing on your SOP. You're walking downtown, you might have a student who's a runner, so you might need to take the teacher's aide with you so that they, are just looking after that student. And you might not have anyone else other than the classroom teacher, because you have access to school very, very quickly if something goes wrong. So, yeah, really think about this tool. Does that make sense? So from here, you would go into, so John, potentially we're not using RAMS forms anymore. They've sort of gone as well.
Okay, yep.
And so we're either using a RAS or a SOP. One's very much operational, what's going to happen at the time, and the other's very much the planning document and the processing. And then identifying who's looking after that residual risk.
I was going to say there's some quite good examples on the Support Venture website too.
Yeah, I'm just going to take them into the
cool.
Our Eons page.
Nice.
So well, let's just hope this works. It did before. So hopefully, I don't know whether you're on the database, John, but hopefully you're all familiar and on the Eons website, and it's an open website. You don't have to be a member, but we do love our members. And probably here, if we look at our EOTC management there, yeah, there are quick links into things that as the EOTC coordinator that you really need to be aware of. The adventure activity regulations, predominantly for those high level of risk activities, but if you're using a provider, some will need to be on that register. You can go and check, it is your responsibility. All the tools are in here. Bridget's already downloaded these. In the toolkit forms, we only have 18, as opposed to Bridget, probably when you came, we had 32. And so there has been a reduction, and we are in the throes of reviewing material at the moment, and thinking about we'll add some more stuff in around water and aquatic abilities and things like that, because that is an area of a concern for us. So you can have all those tools, you make them your own and that sort of thing. These good practice guides here are absolutely stunning, and they've been written by a large number of great outdoor editors and that sort of thing. If you happen to be the EOTC coordinator, these top two are an essential for your kit of resources. I'll just go in here. These three here probably are things that you would look to do, look to download and have a bit of reading and decide the bits that you really need to take out for your staff, but they're particularly good for you, and they highlight the risk ratings for various activities. And there is a driving guidelines and a checklist here, and That's really good. It's one of the things that, you know, and one of the things we look at in the guidelines is how we reduce our carbon footprint. And sometimes that is about going by car instead of by bus or doing local activities. But that's actually quite a good one. John, probably in your place, you do lots of driving. Your girls are all over the place. Is there a process in and around what happens when people take the minibus out before and after? Do we induct people into driving the school minibus? I've had a couple of students that have hit bollards because they had a column minibus, you know, column driver as opposed to the old automatic, and couldn't go backwards, so they went forwards and, you know, damaged the school minibus. But it wasn't really their fault because nobody had inducted them into that process. So that's a good one there if you're, and it's good also if you're going on any form of trip, just to revisit those checklists. I always worried about, well, I didn't really worry until one of my parents had a car accident. Our students often came back to school after a sports trip and just disappeared. And 9 times out of 10, you didn't really know whether they'd actually made it home or not. You were just hoping that because nobody had given you a phone call. So, you know, we set in systems after one of the parents had an accident without any kids. Set in systems about who was in what car, who knew that, but also a process about identifying when they'd got to the place or when they'd got home, they signed in or flicked someone a text so they, you know, we knew they were back. But what happens here is they have a planning template and a good practice guideline, and these guidelines follow exactly the same format, and they're very similar to the material I've just sort of shared with you. So it talks about, you know, the learning opportunities. You'll see the focus on that, and it also links to other resources. And here we go into supervision and talks about competence. So, you know, sometimes those people that decide it's a good idea to do a blind walk and don't know the kids or whatever, there is some form of competence that's required in and around teaching ABL activities. And you know, if some of those things aren't met, it can make it really risky activities, particularly mentally and emotionally for some ākonga. So there are qualifications there, but many of you will have lots and lots of experience. And then it gives you this here, and then it goes to a template, and I'll just take you to the template. And Bridget, it's very much like the risk manager, the RAS that you've had a look at, and a bit like the planning tool. So here you will see this one has been done for you. What you need to do is put your school and your ākonga hat on it and think about whether these things will happen depending on where you're running the activity. And you'll see here, and it's color coded and that sort of thing. None of the risk has been done, and it's got lots of controls in place, but the risk rating, the leftover risk rating or the residual risk rating hasn't been done because it is about your setting and who you're taking with you. You'll notice the language here to eliminate and then to minimize the risk and who's responsible for doing that. We used to have isolate, but that's, you know, that lingo's gone. So these templates in about if you happen to be the person who's signing off on the activities, because it really does drill down quite deeply in potential of activities, of things that can happen and the processes in and around that. Any questions about those? I don't think you need to see that. So here you'll see archery, campfires, a lot of water-based stuff. The overnight camping is the one that's in the toolkit. Many of our schools do sliding and that sort of jazz. And this emergency communications one is another good one for your bookshelf if you're organising the, if you happen to be the EOTC coordinator. So need to reduce that.
Yeah, great pile of resources there.
If they are higher leveled activities, bridge swing, mountain biking, those sort of things, you will actually see some quite dense resources in and around the activity safety guidelines. And they also provide some really good tools in terms of that. I'll just go back up here, back up to our website.
We're on a little screen right now.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing here that is particularly useful for sort of up-to-date practices is our Zoom series that's been held. And we haven't got any on the go at the moment. But if you, not that I'm aware of anyway, I might be wrong there. This is an area in terms of staff competence that often causes a few dilemmas for EOTC coordinators. And so if you look at the back of that form where we're talking about staff competence and, you know, that supervision structure, then you're thinking about, you know, have I got people with the right set of skills to be running these activities? And sometimes you might have to hook someone else in. So this is the lovely little supervision diagram, supervision structure. Here's our teacher in charge. And then there's a different groups here, here, and here. And we know that all our ākonga must have access to quality first aid on any form of their trips. It's a little bit different when you're just wandering, going down the road to the swimming pool or whatever, because you know you'll have a first aid kit with you and you'll certainly have an EpiPen or be aware of those kids that are allergic to bees or things like that. But you also have access pretty quickly with a quick phone call to school to get a driver and someone to pick that child up, or you ring the ambulance and that sort of thing. So this is a really good series here. Nice one in and around the risk assessment forms. They're all pretty stunning. You just need a bit of spare time to pick them off. And they're like this series, they're only about 40 minutes, 45 minutes with some questions. And the other thing is over here is that there are whole resources. Yeah, I'm just looking for revisioning school camps. So if you're an old educator, you would have known all about the Kiwi Outdoors, which was a Hillary Commission resource, and Sophie's put those together in a Kiwis Outdoor and made them all accessible. And so you can download those. They're all in Google Docs and that sort of thing, so you can download them and make them your own. There are some really good little podcasts here in and around outdoor education. This was out of a Year 9 class, wasn't it? So out of those junior programs.
Yep, Year 9 and 10 outdoor ed. And
there is some also really good considerations here in terms of Māori worldview about journeys and that sort of thing. We have a resource here called Revisioning School Camps. Not sure whether you've seen that. It's for years 7 to 10, but it has some stunning questions in there for any age group really, and thinking about what's the learning, why are we doing these activities and that sort of thing. And Sophie Watson runs some professional development on that, and there's a place to line up for those there as well. And then we have, which isn't here, but it's on the slides. So we have the revisioning school camps, and then we also have a DIY camp out, and there's a link on the PowerPoint to that professional development. I think the last workshop for this year is probably the 16th of September, which could be in a couple of days. So quite a few schools have done the revisioning school camps professional development, and then that's been followed up by the DIY do-it-yourself camping. And we know particularly as a result of the Christchurch earthquakes and those sort of bits and pieces, that being able to cook outside, do all those sort of things, light fires, dig toilets, cook and fend for ourselves, was quite important in times of real difficulty. And, that was the basis of my early school camp days. But we've sort of got away and tended to get a little bit more sophisticated, and I think we need, so it's quite good to sort of revisit that. So that's there. And the only other thing that probably needs to be thought about is these new resources here around menstruation and rainbow inclusive practices. And you will find in both this and the camp that there are some fabulous little podcasts with schools at both primary and secondary level who have developed, use these resources to develop their school practices. Key focus, of course, of the ministry is the localised curriculum stuff. So thinking about doing more local, maybe. Obviously, the borders have opened, but it'll be a brave person that rushes kids overseas, because the level of risk is quite high. Sorry about that. One nice little slide there that we use. Any questions, Bridget? Is that you're sort of ready to go? I mean,
yeah, no, I think I'll have a look and see what changes I need to make to what I've done. So, but thank you for that. I appreciate this.
John, any last questions from you?
No, like I had a look through some of the stuff on the website the other day. Like I'm pretty sure we're joined up to EOTC NZ, so I might just try to get a little bit more in depth with it a little bit, and build up my knowledge around it anyway. But thanks for
the Hamilton workshop's sort of been run this year, but there will be another round definitely in 2023, which sounds a bit far away, but it's not really. But you can come back to us with any questions anyway. If you'd like me to send you that A3 template, you'll just need to stick your emails in the chat.
Awesome.
And then you can play around with that yourselves.
Great. Thank you for your time, That was really awesome.
Hey, no problem. My email's on the what's the name, so you can fire any questions. Just close with a quick karakia. I'm overdue. But join with me anyway. Una here, una here, una here, kute uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, tanako, te nana, te wairua, i te tangata, koe rā, e rongo, whakairia, ia, ki rongo, ki tina, tina, hui e, tai ki e. And then just think about that little whakatoki on the right-hand side. And thinking about the ākonga in your school and how they should be the ones that drive your EOTC programs and their needs.
I just want to say thank you so much for your time, Libby. And it's just, it's great to have your knowledge. You're a bit of a guru in the EOTC world. And if you guys don't know, Libby runs some of those EOTC workshops and things. So all those tricky, curly questions, you can always flick an email through to Eons, and one of the gurus will
we do have that website, and I should put it in there, a support link. But
I'll email it out with presentation, because I'll just send a follow-up email, and I'll email
these three. And then email it to me and I'll send them the A3. What was that, Bridget?
Do you need our email addresses, or have you got them from when we signed up?
I've got them from when you signed up.
Cool.